Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And we are still working on our diesel tugboat here by Lindberg. So I guess this is going to be part 9. Starting to run together here. In our last video, we ended up working with our towing machine / winch. And we got to figure out what we're going to do with our winch cable here. So we're going to start off with that, and then we'll work on fitting out the rest of the hull and the main deck, and then we'll move on from there. So let's jump down to the bench here and figure out what we're going to do with this thread / cable thing here. All right, so we're picking up right where we left off. In the last video, we had coiled up our hawser line, but now we have this winch cable to deal with. And I'm sure I'm not doing this correctly. But it just seems to me that having this line kind of flopping around there is probably not a good idea. So we're going to kind of just tie it off here. We're going to do a figure 8 here around the bits. And we just need to know how much of this cable we need to have left. I want to put a little loop in it, so I'm going to kind of guesstimate here where to cut this off at, and we'll just go ahead and snip off all the excess there, just like that. So now with a little bit of medium CA glue, I'm going to use my self-gripping tweezers here to kind of hold the line for me, and we're just going to coil it around. And here comes the hard part. We're going to try to get it to stick together in such a way that it kind of looks like it's bound. So, yeah, with a little bit of glue on it there, a little bit of CA glue there, just like so, we can go ahead and take our little pointy tweezers here and just pull that together. Now it's probably going to glue itself to the tweezers, so when we pull our tweezers away, we want to make sure we don't pull the line apart. And there we go. So being CA glue, it's going to dry pretty quick, and we need to see where we're at here, or if I cut it too short. So my intention was to have it kind of laying off to the left, which would be port, but it's actually not going to be long enough to do that. So as you can see right there, yeah, not really long enough. So I think we'll just let it lay on the deck, just like that right there. So just a little bit of CA glue here on the side of our towing machine / winch assembly there, just to hold the thread down the side of it there, and that should be pretty much all we need there. All right, with that done, we can go ahead and loosen up our hawser line here, just using my hobby knife here to get it detached from the tape there. And if we're very careful, we won't be tearing into the coil here. We definitely don't want to cut it, so don't put the sharp edge up against the hawser there. And just like that, we have a complete assembly that's ready to just plop down on the deck. Now, in one of our previous videos, we had went ahead and primed this. Now, I primed the prop black, and we do need to go ahead and get that painted up and get it installed. So we're going to use this craft paint here. Now, this is metallic bronze, and of course, it being a water-based acrylic, we can thin that with our Vallejo airbrush thinner, or you could just use water to spray that. So since I have primed it in black, that's going to give us a deeper, richer tone for our bronze, which is kind of what I'm going after here. So we'll see how that looks. Now, if you want a brighter bronze, you can use like a light gray. So that looks pretty good, and we're going to have to let that dry, and then we can go ahead and put that on our tugboat. So we're going to flip the tugboat over, and that's the reason why we're not attaching any of the other items yet, so we can go ahead and get our prop affixed to the hull there. And we're going to be using medium CA glue for that too, because it's quick acting. So we just have to be quicker than it is when we go to stick it into place there. So being very careful, we're going to get it lined up right where we want it to go. Now, it's not going to sit exactly where Lindberg, well, actually not Lindberg, but the original manufacturer of the model, which would have been Pyroplastics, where they wanted it to go because of our water line. So we just want to make sure that we're not sticking up above the water line there. So with that done, we can flip the model over, and I'm going to use some masking tape again across the top rail. Here we are just going to mask to the outside of where the cleats are that are going to secure the fenders that we're going to put down the side of our tugboat. And yeah, that's a lot of masking, but here are our fenders that we made up previously, and it has those straight pins in them. So we need to go ahead and pull all of these out, free them from their painting straight pin and alligator clips there. That way we can affix them to the line that is going to have them dangling down off the side there. So I'm going to need some needle and thread for that. And I am using a needle threader, a little tab there with a funny little diamond piece of wire on it. Look at that. Easiest way to thread a needle. Kind of reminds me of the days when I was sewing up my army socks. So, with that done, we need to push the needle through the top of our fenders here. And of course I picked one that is the very first one. Apparently I have a lot of that PVA glue on the top of this. So we want to kind of have it down so that there's plenty of material on top to be able to thread through without tearing out the top of each of the fenders. However, we don't want it so low that it looks kind of unnatural. So we just kind of eyeball it up here, and just about a millimeter down, we can just go ahead and pierce it with the needle there. And that really does thread fairly easy right through that rolled gauze that we used to make these fenders. And if you haven't seen that video, you might want to go look at that, because I think these look much better than the plastic parts that were included in the kit. So we're going to string all of these fenders onto our thread here, and it's just a dark tan thread, nylon thread that we're going to use here, which is going to be the line that we're going to use to actually simulate the installation of these fenders onto the bulwarks there. So with that done, all of them strung up there, we can take the needle off our thread, and then we need to space out. So we need two tails of this thread that protrudes out at each side of the top of each fender. Sounds complicated. So basically we're just going to pull these up and make sure that we've got enough lead line there so that we can do our little tying off a little bit later on. And we don't want to short ourselves on thread. Thread is cheap. It's kind of save us a lot of heartache as long as we keep plenty of line there to work with. Back to our CA glue here. We're going to be using that to attach our fenders down the side of the bulwarks here of our tugboat. And we're going to be using the water line that's painted on the hull as the horizontal, so that we can make sure that we're getting each one of these as vertical as possible. I know I got a crooked eye, so I'll do my best. So, so we just need to put a little bit of the CA glue right on the edge of the top rail, and then right there on the gunnel, just like so. And as I do this, I can use that cocktail stick there to check my vertical. And then we're going to do the same thing with the actual fender, making sure that it's placed in between those little pieces of masking tape there. Kind of keeps us in the middle of where our cleats are that are on the inside of the bulwarks, and then we can just continue on down the side. Just make sure that the leads that we just threaded through the top of each of these, we don't accidentally glue that to the side of the vessel, because it's got to lap over the top of our top rail. So I bent up a piece of copper wire here to help us apply the CA glue to the cleats, which we made in our build videos, construction I should say, and I know my hand's in the way, so the whole idea here is to take the thread over top of the rail, pull it up underneath the bottom of the cleat, and then kind of wrap it in a figure 8 over the cleat. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because most of the time my hand's in the way, and it's if I can see it, you can't see it, and if you can see it, I can't see what I'm doing. So that being the case, each time we pass over into the little groove of our cleat here, we need to put just a little bit of CA glue there to secure that line. Because this is such a tiny wrap, the thread wants to pop back off. So you can't just, thread this thing up and call it good and just cement it with CA glue at the end. You're going to have to, for each one of the wraps, you got to secure it, and then before you make your next turn. I hope I am making sense. Not really a nautical person. I'm doing my best here. So as we get these wrapped up, we can remove those pieces of masking tape along the rail, letting us know that we've finished each one of those and tied each one off. And right about now, I'm thinking maybe I bit off more than I can chew when it comes to putting all those little cleats down the side. So at any rate, once we get them all wrapped up where we want them, we can take and push the tail end of it in behind the piece of thread that comes over the top of the rail there. And I am not going to attempt to do anything else other than pull it down and just put a little, kind of tack it to the side of the cleat there with a little bit of CA glue. And once we get that done, we can pull it down nice and straight and just kind of pinch it together with the tweezers there to make sure that it adheres to it and doesn't pop loose. And then we can go ahead and trim off the excess with our scissors as we get all of them done there, kind of clean everything up. Next up, we're going to use the thick Tamiya cement here, just to put it on the little ledge there where our towing machine is supposed to sit. And I like using the thicker cement because it really holds everything together, and I don't have to really worry about scraping paint off and everything like you would for the Tamiya Extra Thin. So all we got to do is set our winch into place here, press it down, make sure that it's in full contact, and then I can just move the winch line out of the way of the hawser there, because the next part we're going to use some CA glue here. And we're just going to flip up our coil of our hawser here, and we'll put that CA glue, 3 or 4 dabs on the bottom of it there. And this is where it really is kind of expedient, seeing how that we've already made up this coil, and we're not trying to build this on the deck. That way we can just put the CA glue on it, plop it down, give it a little press with our finger, make sure it's in contact, and it's all done. And we don't have to worry about scratching up the paint or making a mess there. So when it comes to the loop for our actual winch line, we just kind of figure out where we want it to lay and put a little dab of CA glue on it as well. And I just attach it to the deck. It's always a good idea to press these things down to make sure that you got good contact there, and hopefully we don't glue our tweezers to it. Moving on to our bow fender, we have this large cavity here, quite a bit of space that's going to be between the actual model and the bow fender itself. So I know this is a little bit unorthodox, but I'm going to use a hot glue gun here. But now if you're wondering, this is the good glue. This is the Gorilla Glue. So we're using Gorilla Glue sticks in our little hot glue gun here. And I'm just going to fill some of the space up there. I don't think it's going to make any contact because we've got quite a bit of room here. And I think originally they only intended the very top of that plastic bow fender to actually stick. And yeah, it didn't really do anything there. So we're just going to pull that off and let it go ahead and dry nice and solid. So, or cool off nice and solid. I'm just checking it with my finger once I think that I'm ready to go. And then we can go ahead and lay in a second layer, or as many layers as you need. So I think 2 is going to be enough for me. But I don't want to put so much in there that it squeezes out around the actual bow fender. We don't want this to be seen. So with the hot glue in place, we can put the bow fender back on and press it into place. We just need to hold it until it tacks up. And it may take a little bit, but once it does, there we go. So we have our bow fender on, and we've got the fenders down the side. We have our winch installed with our hawser and winch cable tied or glued down, and then you can see all of the tie ropes and cables for the side fenders. So that's all done. So now we have our anchor chain, and yes, this is the one that I almost lost when we did the kit review, but I found it. So we need to clean this up a little bit. I'm going to degrease it with some isopropyl alcohol here. Just a little bit in the cup, and I'm going to use a brush here to brush it on. Of course, after doing this, I kind of thought, well, it would have been easier if I just dipped it in the cup and kind of swished it around a little bit there. But that's not what I did here. So either way, it's fine. Isopropyl alcohol will evaporate very quickly, and it will neutralize and take away any oils or anything from the chain making process, whatever that might have been. And we need to get rid of all that so we can paint it. So we need to be able to attach our chain to our anchor. So this is telephone wire. It's actually the same piece of wire I was using as a CA glue applicator. I'm just checking to see if it'll go through the link here because I think it's of the right size. Yes. So that will work for us. So the next thing we need to do is strip off some of this insulation here. And I'm just using a wooden block to elevate my razor knife here so we can strip it off and kind of pull it. Now, I will tell you, this insulation is it's a plastic type insulation. It's really stuck to it. And as you know, or you might not know, but anyway, the telephone wire is very, very tough. But in the process, I have bent this piece of wire up considerably. But don't worry about that. We'll just take a pair of pliers and kind of smash down any of the big bends that we have in it here. Get it fairly straight. Lay it down on the mat here. And I'm just going to take my stainless steel tweezers here and roll it out with a lot of pressure here. That's the reason why the camera's shaking. Sorry about that. But the process of rolling it here on like a cutting mat will straighten that wire right out for us. So we don't have to worry about all those bends that we put in it earlier. So I'm going to use a drill bit as my bending mandrel. Now I sized it up for what I thought would work really well for the loop on our anchor. And this is I think it's a number 40 bit that I'm using. So the only thing we're going to do is just bend it completely around. And we'll just check our size here. So that drill bit is a good mandrel for us. So next thing we need to do is make sure that we hold the loop part really steady so that we don't lose it, and we can just cut both tails off at the same time. And this will give us a connection point there. So with that done, we need to spread it just a bit, and we're going to spread it kind of laterally here so that we can thread on the chain. So we've got to kind of catch that loop in the last eyelet there, or the last chain link, and then we can go ahead and stick our anchor right on, and then we can just squeeze this together, and we have our connection made. So next we're going to use some PVA glue to kind of glue up a couple of pieces of wood here, because we've been working on this model so long, I've kind of gotten rid of all the extra sprues that I had, and I kind of forgot about painting the chain. So we're making a jig here to kind of hold our chain out for us so that we can actually use the airbrush to paint it. Now this is a piece of copper wire that I stripped out of some 18 gauge automotive wire, and I use it for a lot of things. And here we're going to use it to actually suspend our anchor chain in our little wooden jig that we just made. So we just need to thread it through the end of the chain there and give the wire a little twist there. We don't want it to come undone. Then we can take it and secure it to the long end there of our little wooden jig that we've made. I'm going to cut off the excess there because it's kind of in our way. And we can just wrap it around the wood there, and we can twist it back up on itself to make sure that it doesn't slip. And the good thing about doing this on wood is you don't have to worry about it sliding back and forth. And we'll make us a little loop here on the short leg of our jig. Twist the wire, slide the large ring that we just made, and pull the wire down, and then we can just give it a little wrap there. And that should hold it really secure for us. And we're just going to trim off those little legs there, that extra wire. So we're now ready to go to the spray booth. So we're going to paint the chain the same color as we've been using all along. This is that Vallejo black, which is thinned out for our airbrush. And with our homemade painting jig here, we'll be able to actually turn and flip our chain over and change our angle without worrying about trying to chase the chain down. With it suspended like this, and it's nice and secure, we can get all kinds of different painting angles on it there. And we're going to cover everything that we can see to make sure that we don't have any little shiny spots there, because we need to put our own shiny spots a little bit later. Okay, so now it's time for our polished metal modeling pigment. Did I say that right? It's a lot of words, but it's by MIG Ammo. And for applying it to our anchor chain and our anchor, the best way to do it is just to put a little bit on your fingertip and just rub it on. That way you're just catching all the little highlights and stuff. If you were to use a bristle brush to do this, you would get it down into places where it really shouldn't go. So using your finger, you can just highlight all of those little areas. And you can see here on the anchor, it really brings out those highlights there. And just using your fingertip to do that. Now, if you get too much powder on your finger, you can kind of clump it up. So you don't want to do that. And that's why I use that little napkin, little piece of a paper towel there to wipe off the majority of it. And that way we can just get just that polished effect. And here's our anchor. And as you can see, we're just actually hitting the high spots, which makes it much more realistic looking. Now all we got to do is free our anchor and anchor chain from our painting jig here. And I am cutting those little loops that we put in the wire close to the actual chain, because you don't really want to pull this wire through the chain too much because, well, that would pull the paint off, and we don't want to do that. So now we can go ahead and affix our anchor to the tugboat. We'll just put it through the hawse hole there, and then we're going to feed the chain down through this hole in the deck, very carefully there. And once we get that down through the hole, we can apply a little bit of CA glue to the chain just to the left and right, just inside the hole there. It's not going to be visible, or it shouldn't be anyway, but it would be hard to see. And that'll secure that. So next up, we need to work on our base and our stands here. So I've gone ahead and attached this is 3M mounting tape. So it's a double-sided foam tape, which is also what I'm using to hold it to the stick there for painting. And the ideal here is that we can go ahead and paint these up, and we've left the protective film on the top of it there so that we can paint it, and then we can pull that off later and still have a sticky surface there to attach our tug. So now when it comes to sanding the base, I just use this 220 grit sanding foam, and with a foam sander like this, you can get down into the edges a little bit there. And I just did kind of a once over. This was already pre-sanded from the factory, but I felt it was a good idea to go ahead and make sure that there wasn't any little grain whiskers or anything like that sticking up. So next up, I'm going to use this Vallejo black acrylic here, and we are going to use that to kind of color in the edges of that foam mounting tape there. We don't really want that visible, but by sealing it ahead of time before we go to spray it, we shouldn't have to worry about any of that white kind of showing through. That would kind of spoil the look of the display. So I'm just going to paint up the edges of each of these little mounting points we got here. Make sure that foam tape, it should take the gray paint that we're going to paint it later just fine. So what I'm going to use to paint our stands is going to be this charcoal gray. Yes, this is water-based acrylic craft paint, and it doesn't really look quite charcoal, but it's a decent gray. Now I do have to thin it out for the airbrush because craft paints can be considerably thick. So just make sure that you've got it to the right consistency so that you can spray it. And then off to the spray booth we go. And just remember now, we did leave our the little protective pieces of film on top of our mounting tape, so we can easily just paint everything and not have to worry about getting paint onto the sticky surface, which we're going to need later to actually mount the tugboat to our base. So we're going to get a really good coat on this. No pre-shading or anything necessary at this point, I don't think. And just as we did on the hull of the tugboat, we're going to cover it with a coat of this Vallejo Gloss Clear acrylic. Thinned out for the airbrush, of course. Really helps with the flow and the easy spray pattern there. Now, while that is drying, we're going to do some staining. So this is Minwax Wood Finish, and this is a gray, which is a semi-transparent color. And we are going to apply it with a lint-free cloth. That's why I'm wearing my gloves. So you do want to make sure, though, that you shake any stain that you're using, and it's well mixed, because those pigments really settle to the bottom. So I have these little stands here, which is going to help elevate our workpiece here, which happens to be this piece of wood that we're going to use for our base. Up off the mat there so everything can dry. And I'm going to do the edges first, just rubbing it on. So yeah, this is a hand rubbed finish. Once I get all the edges done, though, we can start to concentrate on the top surface here. Now, it's not important to do the bottom, So we're just going to do the top. And as you can see here, I'm just wiping it on. Now this is an oil-based stain, and you just want to put it on nice and even. And oil-based stains do not show up splotchy most of the time. It's usually a good even finish. Now if you are using a water-based stain, make sure that you use a wood conditioner first before you apply it, because water-based stains can come out kind of spotty and splotchy there. Now once that's dry, and I did give mine a good overnight, let it dry, you may find that it is just a little bit rough, and that's because the stain has caused some of the wood fibers to swell a little bit, which will cause them to raise up above the surface. So we're just going to smooth that out very, very lightly, just sanding it with our 220 once more, and then we will wipe that down with a paper towel to make sure that there's no sanding dust on it. You just want to be careful not to sand through your stained finish there. And we can also use our desktop cleaner here to help vacuum everything up before we wipe it down with a paper towel. Now as a top coat, we're going to use the Minwax Wipe-On Poly, and this is the clear satin. I really don't want it really shiny, and I have poured it out here in one of these little condiment cups here. And we're going to use the same method because it is a wipe-on polyurethane finish. So we're going to need our lint-free cloth here to apply it with. And I have done this the exact same way we did the stain. I did the edges first, and now we can go ahead and do the top surface. And just to go with the grain here and just kind of put it on. It's very easy, and we don't have to worry about cleaning a brush afterwards either, because we're using this cloth, which once we let it dry out, we can just toss this in the garbage. But don't do that before it dries, because an enclosed area may cause a fire. You don't want that. So I've given it a good 6 hours to dry, and we're ready to assemble our base. So yeah, sometimes wood is just not perfectly flat, so we're going to kind of help it out here with some of these felt feet, little felt feet. So we only need 4, and yes, they have self-adhesive backs on them there, and we're just going to stick them on the corners there to help stabilize our base, and also it won't scratch your furniture or your shelf or your table or whatever that you put this on for display. And with that done, we can go ahead and prep our stands here. As you can see, that double stick tape that we're using is very sticky, so you can scrape it off with your fingernail, and it usually just pulls off pretty clean there. And that's the reason why you don't want to put on anything fragile to try to hold it if you're trying to remove it later. So we're going to do a little bit of rust streaking here. Now this is AK Interactive rust streak, a little bit of enamel thinner, and then a small brush. And kind of the effect that I'm going for here is that these stands do have a little bit of bolt detail on them. So we can go ahead and put a little bit of rust around our bolts, which will be a nice little detail as somebody's looking at the model. They can see that, oh, this is weathered, you know, it's got rust. So we like rust sometimes. So when it comes to cleaning it up and streaking it down, we're just going to use enamel thinner because this is an enamel product, the AK Interactive Rust Streaks. And we can just pull it and manipulate it to make it look like it is running in the same direction that gravity would pull the water. So we're just going to streak this out just a little bit, not going to overdo it, just a little bit of something extra to look at there. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So that ought to look nice on our base. Speaking of which, it's time to actually attach these to our wooden base. And you need to watch that bolt pattern is facing outward. Same thing on the front. We got a couple of bolts there to face forward. So the stand with the large pads is towards the front, and the one with the small pads is towards the rear. So all we got to do now is start our brass screws. Now, I kind of was wondering if I should actually weather these screws or not. I didn't polish them up nice and shiny, but I think I'm just going to leave them just as they are. And I mean, we can always change it later if we feel that we need to, but we'll just go ahead and attach our bases at this point. And you want to be sure that you don't crank down on the screwdriver too much here, just nice and snug. That's it. Just remember, these are plastic parts, and you can break them. So there we are with our stands attached to our base. And I was kind of looking at this wood grain at the front. Kind of looks like maybe a bow wave or something like that. So that's going to be the, the bow end when we mount our tugboat. So when it comes to mounting the tugboat, yeah, this is going to be difficult. So I measured and set everything up, and then I put some masking tape, as you can see there, on the bottom of the hull to help me align it to that mounting tape, because that's going to be kind of tricky. So here we're going to do a couple of test drops of our tugboat, because I really, basically, you really got to stick this the first time. So I'm just practicing to make sure that I understand exactly what I need to do before we do it for real, because that mounting tape doesn't want to let go once you're stuck on. So we need to also check our alignment once we drop it on to make sure that where we mark the hull, that's correct. And I'm just using a 90-degree angle square here to check the stern and the rudder, basically, to make sure that it is vertical. So once we're satisfied and ready to do the deed here, we need to pull off that protective covering that is on top of that mounting tape. And with that removed, I guess we're going to be ready to do this. So just take a deep breath and we'll just get it done. So we did all the practice drops to get our tugboat lined up, and I felt that it was better for me to put my hand right on the bow, which means that I'm in your visual, and I'm sorry about that, that you can't see exactly what I'm doing. But we only get one shot at this, so we're just going to take a deep breath and do it. Whew. Okay, so there we are. for better or worse, we're in there now. So I don't think we did too bad of a job sticking our hull right where it's supposed to be. It looks like it's supposed to be there, I guess. Couple of things. You're probably wondering why I decided to use the foam double-sided mounting tape to adhere our hull down to our stand, and that's because these stands here, they don't really conform to the hull of the boat, so the foam kind of takes up and makes up for that, so there aren't any gaps there. So it just makes for a cleaner look. Of course, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get the boat right down on top of our mounting base there. So yeah, it was touch and go there for a second, but once we touched, we had to go. So, but it looks pretty good, and we got our towing machine or winch in place, and we got all of our fenders on, and yeah. So this is all the hull, the stand, and everything. We've got all that done because we're going to start working next on the superstructure, which is we got to get it painted. It's only primed up. We did all that construction on it and all that, but now we got to get everything painted. and masked and repainted and all that good stuff, and get it assembled. And then in the end, we will just be able to put that right down on top of our tug, and that'll be that. So look for that. We're going to start working on the superstructure in the next video. So special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. A little bit suspenseful there at the end. And if you are new to the channel, I hope today I earned your subscription. So yeah, go get a old model and see what you can do with it. This one's looking pretty good. So I guess I will see you guys next week. So you guys stay safe.